Stories about family wine businesses are as diverse as the number of grape varieties themselves. Join us as we introduce you to the heartfelt Hoops family story. Thank you so much for joining us today. This property is absolutely spectacular, and I understand you are second generation here at this vineyard.
That's correct.
So tell me a little bit about your family history and how you came to acquire this particular spot.
To be honest, I think it was a bit of luck, and my father actually was based in the Presidio Army Base in San Francisco and decided that he was sick of the San Francisco fog, wanted to return to his roots in agriculture, and so we moved to the closest veterans home, actually, in an agricultural area, which happened to be Yountville. And he purchased this particular property in 1981 for approximately, it was 12 acres for approximately $100,000.
No way.
Yes, with a house on it. And didn't actually know anything about viticulture. He had started to expose himself about wine, but certainly growing up in southeastern Arizona didn't know anything about it. So really relied on the history of our neighbors to find out what would be the next big thing. And it seems silly to say that today, but in the early 80s it wasn't quite as obvious.
Right, absolutely. Well, talk about a stroke of luck for sure. So he really devoted his life then to learning everything he could about vineyards and viticulture.
Well, I think once it was his farm and this became his retirement project, he took it on himself to actually learn not only about viticulture, but also enology. So he became very passionate about the land, about the Oakville area, forming bonds with a lot of our neighbors to preserve the area, to help promote the agricultural preserve, and then continue really basing this industry around farming as opposed to disassociating kind of the wine industry from the agricultural aspects.
So did you grow up right here?
I did. I mean, I was born in San Francisco. We moved here when I was quite young, and my mother always maintained work in San Francisco because she was a designer until later in her career when that became an opportunity here in the Napa Valley. It was a very different place when we were growing up, and so she often commuted, but my father was here primarily maintaining this as his business.
So did you spend a lot of time out in the vineyards with your dad?
Yes.
So is that where your passion really started then?
I can't say that my passion was awake when I was necessarily young. I mean, I think growing up in a small family business, you always have a job, and sometimes when you're younger, it's hard to appreciate that that's
true.
Part of, being in a small family business, and it's hard to appreciate why that's fun and meaningful and sort of a legacy. But So I sort of, protested coming into the wine business, and I ended up wanting to leave first thing when I was in high school. So I went to boarding school, I went to college on the East Coast, and kind of stayed away as long as possible. But in that time, my father actually started making wine, not just growing grapes. And so I came back after school and sort of reported to duty, if you will. My father was not excited about hiring me initially. He thought that I had poo-pooed farming, and what he wanted me to learn was that farming is really the most important part of our job. You can't make good wine unless you grow good grapes. And so if I thought making wine was somehow divorced from farming, I was going to be in the wrong industry. So he wanted me to kind of work my way in, and it took about 12 years to ultimately get the job, but here I am.
Here you are. Well, cheers to that. So let's talk more about his vision and your vision now and kind of the brand as it's moving forward.
I think my father, because he was primarily focused on growing for other people, really wanted to grow the greatest quality grapes, but didn't necessarily envision a brand per se, a winery brand. So I think that the wine itself and what we bottle and what we sell today is much more of the next generation, although he did make a small production of wine starting in 1999. We really transitioned into production and taking grapes we sold to other people back in-house when I took over the business. I think the other aspect is that my father didn't have the benefit of a lot of the scientific knowledge that we have today, not only with respect to geology and how that affects the wine, but also just new visions as to how important organic and sustainably farming practices are to growing good grapes and thus making good wine. So he actually was one of the early adopters of organic farming, but never necessarily saw a lot of the benefits that we now have the luxury of knowing. So we have taken his foundation, but then evolved that into the next generation of making new wines, better wines, by improving our farming practices.
To jump a little bit to the labels. The labels are so fun, very playful, and obviously there's a cute little dog featured on them.
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
So Dante is on the label. I always joke that Dante was my father's favorite child. So he got the label, I got the job, eventually. And Dante was a Jack Russell Terrier. He passed away when he was 19. He definitely got the front seat in the truck and had his own water cup there.
Aww.
He was a fabulous vineyard dog and really is the spirit of our family. So because we are family run and operated, we wanted to represent the whole family, and putting Dante as our mascot seemed like an obvious choice.
Well, we really appreciate you having us, so cheers to that.
Cheers. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. We love capturing these stories about people who are so passionate about creating these premium handcrafted wines. So be sure to order yours today, and thank you for your support.